Hey guys, today we're going to talk about how to solve multiplication and division equations. But before we do that, we're going to review solving addition and subtraction equations because the rules are very similar. So let's look at this example. And remember, I look at what's happening with the variable. So I see that 5 is being added, and I do the opposite. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So these 5's cancel out. I'm just left with x on this side, which is exactly what I wanted. And then 25 minus 5 equals 20. So there's our review. We just look at what's happening with the variable and do the opposite. Now, we're going to look at multiplication and division. So let's start with this first example. I have 5b equals 40. So first you need to know that when a number is written next to a variable, that means multiply. So 5b means 5 times b. Again, I'm looking at what's happening with the variable and I'm going to do the opposite. The opposite of multiplication is division. So remember, division can look like a fraction, which is what I want it to look like when I'm solving these equations. So the 5 divided by 5, that cancels itself out because 5 divided by 5 is 1. So I'm just left with 1b or just b. And then on the other side, if I do 40 divided by 5, I get 8. Let's look at a couple more like this. I have negative 7k equals 14. Remember, when a number is written next to a variable, that means multiply. So I see negative 7 times k, I have to do the opposite. The opposite of multiplication is division. Now when there's a negative in front of that number, I'm going to divide by negative 7. I need to divide by whatever's there. So if it's positive 7, I'm dividing by positive 7. If it's negative 7, I'm dividing by negative 7. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Remember, anything divided by itself equals 1. So I'm just left with 1k or k. And then 14 divided by negative 7, think of your integers rules. When there's one negative, the answer is negative, and 14 divided by 7 is 2. Okay? Okay, let's do a couple more of these multiplication examples, and I forgot to tell you I'm on page 52 in the textbook, so please follow along. Sorry about that. Okay, so again, I see negative 3 times n, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to divide. And I'm dividing by whatever's next to the variable. So since negative 3 is next to the variable, that's what I divide by. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1n, or just n. And negative 18 divided by negative 3. Now our integer rules here say when you have two negatives, or an even number of negatives, it equals a positive answer. So 18 divided by 3 is 6, and n equals 6. And one more, I wanted to do this one because they switched the side that the variable is on, and I don't want that to freak you out. It's totally fine. We're just going to solve it like we're solving it in a mirror. Everything's going to be flipped over, okay? So I see 4 times x, so I'm doing the opposite. I'm going to divide both sides by whatever's next to the x. Since 4 is next to the x, that's what I'm dividing by. These two cancel out, and I'm just left with x. Notice how I keep the x on that side of the equal sign. I don't want to switch sides with my variable because I'm going to get a big mess. You'll see later when we get into higher algebra how that makes a problem if you switch sides. So then I'm just going to do the math on this side. Negative 20 divided by 4. I see one negative, so I'm going to have a negative answer. And 20 divided by 4 is 5. So on this problem, x equals negative 5. Okay, so you can see our next two examples look a little different. Remember, fraction means divide. So now I have some division problems and I need to do the opposite. So I see p divided by 9. I need to make that times 9. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 9. Now what happens over here is these two cancel each other out. They equal 1 because essentially I have 9 over 1 times 1 over 9. And when I multiply that together, I get 9 over 9, which equals 1. Okay? So just know that those two are going to cancel each other out. And I'm just left with p. And then on this side, 9 times 9 is 81. Okay, let's do the next one. So I see a over 12. I see a fraction. I see division. So I'm going to do the opposite. Opposite of division is multiplication. So remember, these two guys are going to cancel each other out because I'm multiplying fractions here. This is like 12 over 1 times 1 over 12, which equals 1. So I'm just left with a. And then I have a negative 3 times 12, which is going to equal negative 36. Okay, let's do one more division example. So I see m divided by negative 2. Remember, fraction means divide. So I'm going to do the opposite, which is multiply. And remember, you see how it was a negative 2 on the bottom, so I'm multiplying both sides by negative 2. Whatever is there, that's what you're multiplying by. So these two guys are going to equal 1, so I'm just left with m. And negative 22 times negative 2, I see two negatives, which means I'm going to get a positive answer. And 2 times 22 is 44. Now for the last part today, you are going to try some examples yourself. Yay! I'm trying something new. I think it's going to be awesome. So let me write these down and then I'll tell you how we're going to do it. Okay, so here's your two examples. I want you to pause the video, write them down in your math journal, and solve them, each one. Try your best. It's okay if you don't do it right or you get it wrong. I'm going to show you after you pause the video. I'm going to show you how to solve it correctly. So remember, look at what's happening to the variable and do the opposite. In the first problem, I have 9 times n. In the second problem, I have z divided by 8. Yes, that's my z, because if I don't cross it, it looks like a 2, because I write sloppy. So that's a z, okay? So look at what's happening with the variable, do the opposite. Okay, pause the video, and then I'm going to solve this for you. Okay, if you're back with me, that means you already wrote both of these problems in your math journal and you solved them yourself. Yes. Okay, please be honest because you got to try this yourself to make sure you're getting it. Okay, so I'm going to solve it for you now. I have 9 times n, so I'm going to do the opposite. Opposite of times or multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by whatever is next to the n. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Those two cancel out, and I'm just left with n. And then 45 divided by 9 is 5. All right, send me a comment on Google Classroom and let me know if you got these right or if you need a little more practice, okay? Be honest, because I want to know. Okay, and then the next one, I have z divided by 8, so I'm going to do the opposite of division, which is multiplication. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So these two 8s are going to equal 1. and I'm just left with z on that side. Notice how I'm keeping my z on that side. And then I'm just going to multiply 8 times 7, which is 56. So z equals 56. Okay? Send me a comment on Google Classroom. Let me know how you did. And watch this video as many times as you need to until you feel really good and confident in this area. Okay? Email me if you have any questions. See you next time.